trickle in.
I have the roster up if we want to quick do introductions. I think everybody's still getting to kind of know each other quick. Kathy, are you on?
I am. Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Fraser. I am representing the city of Brooklyn Park.
Corey.
Hi, I'm Corey Funk, and I am also in Brooklyn Park, and I'm Sammy Perella's fan.
Ooh.
That's a good one.
Caroline. I don't know if I saw her on. Craig, I almost skipped it.
Hey everyone, Craig Gottschalk, and I'm representing Crystal.
Good evening. Our Robbinsdale folks.
Hi, I'm Jason, and Jean is there as well.
Golden Valley.
Hi all, Scott Boer.
Hey all, Felipe.
Our City of Minneapolis folks. Starting with Kathy. I don't know if I see Kathy on yet. Is Peggy Sue on? Yes, she is. Maybe not fully connected yet. Welcome, Peggy Sue. Good evening, even if you're having trouble unmuting. Giuseppe.
Giuseppe from Minneapolis, and my favorite pizza's over in St. Paul. Carboni's on Randolph is as close as you get to Chicago-style pizza. Being from Chicago, I can say that.
You're here for Chicago style. It is probably my favorite as well. Is Catherine on yet? Didn't see her name. Okay. Ken?
Yeah, Ken Rogers. I represent Metropolitan Council Transportation Access Advisory Committee.
And our folks that were appointed by Hennepin County, but actually live in well, everybody lives in Hennepin County, but that's on this call, but also live in various cities along our project corridor. So starting with Adam.
Hey, Adam, North Minneapolis resident, and I think we're forgetting about Fat Lorenzo's over South Side. So,
oh yeah.
Yeah, that's an iconic.
That's a have to.
Is John? I don't know if I saw John. Is John on? And no worries, Peggy. So sometimes it's getting our technology all figured out. I saw Ellis.
Hey everybody, Ellis, Adam Thurston.
And the folks that were appointed by Metropolitan Council, but also live in the various cities along the line. Let's see, who is on? Is Nira? Brett.
Hi, Brett Buckner. From Met Council, but North Minneapolis, and go Polars and go Broadway Pizza.
And Jennifer. Okay, Chair, that's introductions. We have staff on the line as well, but we can kind of get to know us as we go through the presentation, and kind of back to you to take on the next agenda item.
Yeah, so I guess we need to, hopefully everybody was able to look at the minutes from March 1st and the March 22nd meeting. So I guess we need to approve those notes, the minutes.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Approve the minutes as
Second.
written.
So that, I guess, do we have like official motions? I don't know like how intense to follow.
For the minutes, the committee seems to just like to take the formal motion, so we don't really vote, but it works just to do it that way.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so I think as far as motions go, that's approved in the minutes from our last meetings. So then I guess we need to get into talking about the follow-up from the March 22nd meeting. And I think there are presentation. Am I doing the presentation, or is that?
So I can get that loaded. And in terms of that agenda topic, hang on, let me go to full screen. Talking and doing at the same time is harder than it seems sometimes. In terms of what I have up for this slide, just kind of think the request to have some time for folks to share any other thoughts or ask any questions from our last meeting and the route rollout. And Jason, I think when we talked as a group, with the co-chairs, just wanting folks to think if there's any kind of engagement that they would like to see happen and whatnot, this could be a space for that to take.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. And that makes sense. So I think, one of the things that has come up repeatedly in our meetings is just that like things get presented during this meeting and then it's like we're asking for immediate feedback, and it's like, well, we want to engage with the community and actually have something to talk about that goes beyond our own opinions. And so I think I wanted to make sure or Felipe and I just want to make sure we had this time to if there were things, and there will be, I don't know if you were able to look at the agenda, but there are some things that we're going to get into as far as detail. So if it isn't something that needs to come up now, we'll probably talk about it later, but just to make sure that there was a space built into the meeting for the different organizations and stakeholders and CAC members to give feedback based on, I guess the last meeting, it was like, here's what we want your opinions on. And it was like, give it to us right now. And we don't really have all that information yet. So I guess leave it.
So it's Felipe. So one of the things that I was thinking about from our last call, and I saw it in the chat box on the last call, was one of the questions that, we're talking about the three options that you had, area 1, 2, and 3. And it just led me to a couple questions. One is, we were talking about one train line. Do we have an overall picture of what the entire train line should look like in 20, 30, 50 years? Are we trying to map every city, town, suburb to get an opportunity to connect to each suburb or to get downtown? It seems a little hard just saying we've got one route that we're going to do and it's going to go from downtown to Brooklyn Park. Well, are we going to go east or west or any of that? So I think when we talk about sharing out with the communities, if there's any idea of a bigger map of here's where we're planning to sort of go or think we're going to go in the next 20, 30 years, I think that would be helpful. Just to ease a lot of questions, because you're saying here's the 3 areas that you have to choose for, the 3 routes, and then there's a lot of questions like, well, how do you only get to those 3 routes? Can we not have those 3 and 2? Are there more? Are we looking at just that? So I would think any talking points around that would be helpful for when we go out to talk to the community.
We can bring maybe to the next meeting Metro Transit or the council, really the kind of long range planning map in terms of our metro system. Now that doesn't, we have our whole bus system and that as well, but the metro includes LRT and bus rapid transit, kind of those beefier metro systems. And so we can bring that visual for folks and kind of talk about how things get added to that. So Liz, help me remember that in the notes as a follow-up for next week, and I'm sure the chairs will. So Felipe, you are our chair. We'll make sure that gets on the agenda.
Yeah.
That's good. Any other thoughts? Chairs, I also, I have a little bit of kind of what we've been hearing so far, engagement report, so it might spur some additional conversation if we just want to get into it.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any raised hands and no one's unmuting, so I think let's move forward, because I mean, part of the agenda addresses some of the feedback that we've been hearing, and I think maybe some individual city representatives can speak to it as well.
Sounds great. Okay, I'll jump in then. Oops. Okay. funky mouse. Okay, there, in the space that it needs to be. So, we're in the process now of getting ongoing feedback, and just kind of want to highlight what we're hearing so far and talk about how in the next month or even more we continue to get robust feedback and get people both aware of the project as well as start that kind of response of filling in those details that people are really asking about. So obviously we've been talking to all of you, right? So a lot of feedback comes from the advisory committees. I think we've tried to adjust and be mobile based on what we've heard from our advisory committees. We had the 3 town halls with about 150 participants between the 3 events. Some of you attended those. It's always interesting to hear your feedback on what you thought of them, but some very, I think, robust discussion in all of those, a lot of takeaways. We were starting to have more community and business stakeholder check-ins, so kind of more on that, like either focused geographic or smaller group. And folks on this call have even helped me kind of get connected to those opportunities, and we really appreciate that. So that is a lot of our focus right now. We have the interactive map. My next slide kind of shows a picture of that, but we've had over 200 comments, and that's some people are commenting. Some of those comments are folks commenting multiple times, maybe like put a couple station locations, and then there's responses to some of the comments as well. Our survey, I finished the slide deck about Thursday, and at that time we had about 700 responses. In the last few days since then, we're getting closer to, we're over 800 now, so that number has changed, but that also just kind of caveats, shows the feedback that's kind of coming in and how it's evolving. Just want to note that though for the next slide, as I pulled some statistics from the survey. We have a general comment form and just comments into me. I'd say we have about a few dozen like official comments, and then a lot of things that are just coming in as like statements or questions or just wanting discussion about what people are seeing. So kind of more of that conversational versus like I have an official comment for the record. So been a lot of this in terms of just people wanting to engage, get more information, have a conversation. So if you're on our homepage of our website, the interactive map, everybody can see the comments. So if you want to poke around in any of the areas and see what your fellow neighbors are saying, this is the place to go and continue to add to it. I think it's interesting how a dot will actually spur a conversation among people, and people kind of answer each other almost in it or add to it. So please take a look. Please add. It's been very. I know our engineering team pokes it around a lot as well. And from all of these platforms that we're talking about, so talking to you all, having these broader meetings, starting to have more specific meetings, the survey itself, we're starting to see some themes emerge. And so just want to touch on those real quick. So overall, I think we've heard a fairly general support of LRT, folks wanting to do the transit investment. But a lot of the support is also coupled with their wanting more information. I've had a lot of conversations where people are like, I want to fight for LRT, but you need to answer these things for me first before I feel comfortable saying yes to this idea, to your route that you're proposing. So obviously a directive for us to work throughout the year and drill down in. But that's, I think, that's a good place to be. And then as you kind of peel back that next layer, a lot of specific questions about, well, what does this roadway look like? Are you keeping the left turn, kind of to that granular comment, but even just what's the impact to my adjacent home, my business, the overall look and feel of the roadway with this infrastructure. And obviously the desire to preserve business. You're hearing a lot about, various community assets and gems along our alignment where people are very wanting to just say, like, don't mess up with this place, right? Make it have that light touch. And then there's been basically 3 major things that we keep hearing about the most. And I'm going to actually go backwards up the list. So stations, for the sections of the line that are new, that is the main question. And actually one of the main things that people have kind of reached out to me and wanted to talk through, like, how are you placing stations? Could a station be here? I have a business here. you know, we would like to see a station. We deal with a lot of youth, you know, that kind of thing. And really, the overarching thing is obviously you can't pick a line if you don't know where the stations are. Like you can't feel comfortable with what we're coming forward until we have that discussion. Kind of coupled with what I was talking before, structures, right? Could this be elevated? Could this be in a tunnel? How do you get that process of adding that? That's been something that's overall we hear it in all of our venues. And I think that gets into starting to show some of that initial engineering work and the need for that. And then kind of green infrastructure. And I kind of took two pathways of comments to kind of put into that piece, which is we're hearing a lot of folks that just want to see us push the limits of what the LRT system looks like. So in terms of planting, other green infrastructure, but even more in like the pure infrastructure itself. So thinking of our water management and being very conscious of that, or you know, we're ripping up a road. Can we be more environmentally friendly with how we do water management? Or just really thinking about having a walkable space, a walkable, bikeable space. So I think, you know, climate change is maybe more on people's minds than it was 10 years ago. And so hearing a lot of push for us to push the needle where we can. Or even just how LRT supports those goals. So want to caveat these numbers very strongly in the sense that, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jason.
One other question, and I know it comes up, maybe it's specifically in Robbinsdale, it could be in other areas as well, but just around like pedestrian safety and like safety as far as like roads and I guess that maybe falls into turn lanes and stuff a little bit, but just around like overall kids on bikes, people walking across the street, just like line safety, I know is a theme that I've run into a lot. I don't know if that's consistent across the board, but that I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thanks for that. And I would say pedestrian safety, and more so in terms of their interaction with cars. You know, people will ask about lighting or things like that, but it's really, is this a friendly, walkable environment? Has come up, I think, almost across the board as well. So,
yeah, Sophia, when we get into street running, when we get into talking about street running LRT, just the interaction between vehicular traffic, pedestrian traffic, LRT traffic, bicycles, and just all of those ways will become important. What are the cues? What are the design elements that we can use to help people realize, okay, this is safe, this is not safe, don't be here, don't be there. And you know, we've learned a lot about the pluses and minuses and how to build that in. That'll be a big piece along the entire alignment in all the cities. Yes.
I just also have to say, I love how Jason got my attention. So that works really well for anybody during the conversation. It's a lot easier to see. Was that Ken? Sorry, Ken.
Oh yeah, no worries. I just wanted to add a comment. I feel a little bit of deja vu to some degree because I served on the LRT Central Corridor University CAC, and you know, and I know many of these details that people want to drill down to right away. The questions about water flow and being more green, lighting, pedestrian flow, all of those things are coming just based on my past experience working on the Green Line. Once the alignment gets created and set, and the station designs are all considered, then all that other stuff kind of falls in place. So I think it's interesting to hear people's comments about those types of things because those are important to people. But in the life cycle, if I can compare it to the Central Corridor, its time will come. The one thing I do want to comment in, and I was going to bring this up later, but I might as well bring it up now. The one thing I think we might have a missed opportunity if we're not able to do the same thing with the Blue Line extension is I think the one thing that saved the Central Corridor was, you know, it was clear from the beginning that from building line on one side of the street to the building line on the other side of the street was completely going to be redone. And that gave business owners and people with businesses on the line a little bit of a pause, because they know that not only was the line construction going to be a disruption to their business, but if we were also constructing sidewalks and all that stuff, that's also going to create interruption to their business. And on the corridor, there was a group of staff that had access to a bucket of funds that were there. I think they were called mitigation funds, and they could interact with business owners and talk about different things that they could do to help mitigate interruptions to their business. For many on the Green Line on University, because they had the ability and uh, back parking lots, some people chose to put entrances in the back, and that was kind of picked up, or costs for that were shared with the Green Line Central Corridor. That really turned a lot of business naysayers into business supporters. And as I understand it, we're not approaching the same approach on this line. Can somebody identify that a little more clearly for me?
Sure, Ken. Obviously, thanks for that, and I know that well. And I would say that is, I would not say that we have certainly gotten anywhere close to the ability to recognize that yet. And I would imagine something very similar would be part of the project. What Ken refers to is we built an allowance into the construction contract on Central Corridor that we were able to tap into, where, say, and this was especially prevalent on University Avenue, may not be everywhere here, but let's say we needed to work at a driveway in front of a business, and that driveway had to be closed for a few days. We were able to say, open up the fence in the back parking lot, provide access from the alley, and then put some signs up into that, guiding people into that property via the alley. And then when we were done with the driveway, kind of replaced the fence again and put it back in order. So I think, Ken, that same kind of thing will likely be available. And of course, it's different in different parts of the corridor. In some spots, we will absolutely likely be reconstructing from building to building across the right of way in Robbinsdale and in Minneapolis, especially when we're in Crystal, right? We may be building LRT in the roadway, but not needing to reconstruct the whole roadway. So it'll be different along different parts of the corridor. But yeah, that'll be part of what we'll build in to help get people around and in and to serve those businesses during construction.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else before I move on? Sometimes discussion leads to discussion. Okay. Again, welcome invitation to jump in whenever you want with questions. That's again, don't want to just present, right? It's good to actually hear from folks. So caveat numbers, these will change with getting about 800 comments. You know, we still want about triple that, right? In terms of hearing from folks and reaching deeper. So this is really kind of just a first blush, just so folks kind of see what we're seeing so far. And so about 55% of folks, when asked what route are you most in favor of advancing, selected West Broadway. About 22% prefer Lowry Avenue, and about 23% basically need more information or have another reason or another option. So that could include saying something like no LRT, or suggesting something. So a lot of this number, though, is that there was a pretty good amount of folks that just want more information before they select a preference. We talked briefly as a committee about the project goals, and that is a topic that will have to come back at a future meeting, especially as we start to fill in the criteria and then kind of get to that matrix for evaluation of the system. But so far, 60% of folks are saying that the two items that come to the top are really that improved transit access and that connection to jobs and regional destinations. So kind of one of the top priorities that we should consider when evaluating options. The other one is to advance local and regional equity and work towards reducing racial disparities, regional racial disparities. And just for a reminder, this was not originally one that was part of the Blue Line 1.0, and we pulled that specifically out of the criteria into the project goals based on conversations. It's kind of embedded in it, but not as in the forefront. And so that was part of the update, and I think something that we heard from the committee also that was something to support. So some very preliminary stuff of what we're hearing. This is kind of focused on Area 3 to some extent with West Broadway. Any questions? Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Joan to talk a little bit about the community engagement cohort. Jean.
On the advanced local and regional equity and work towards reducing regional racial disparities, you know, there's 55% going down West Broadway. Generally thinking, if that occurs and West Broadway becomes vibrant, doesn't that take care of the reducing regional racial disparities? That's just a question.
Yeah, so I think the way to frame that is as you look at the options, which one is able to most do that? So that is kind of the root of the question, yeah. Okay, feel free to jump in with more thoughts, but turn it over to Joan Van Hala for a second to get us grounded in the work of the community engagement cohort contractors.
Hi all, this is Joan Van Hala. I'm Hennepin County Engagement Specialist and part of the Blue Line LRT project management team. And we have finalized 14 community engagement contracts, recognizing that we have community experts on cultures and geographies in the corridor that we can tap into as they reach out to their natural networks. We have community and cultural groups that focus on Area 1, Area 2, and Area 3, so we feel like we have very good coverage throughout the corridor. We have included in those 14, we have 4 groups that are focusing on amplifying project community networks. And I encourage you guys to do that too. We're all connected to a circle of people, and that will really help to get the word out on the survey and the mapping tool that is on the project web page. The goal of this group, we're going on to their 3rd meeting. We had 2 orientation sessions, and now we're going to be meeting monthly. And the whole goal of this group is to be collaborative and coordinated across the corridor with the project management team. And also maybe at some point, if you were interested, we could have them meet the community advisory committee. These are 10-month contracts and they end on January 2022. So if you could go to the next slide, Sophia. So here's the list of groups that we are bringing on board. I think you can see that we have some really great cultural representation in this list. These groups are connected to the African American community, African immigrant community, Asian Pacific Islanders, the Latino community, small businesses, youth and young adults, neighborhood organizations, and the arts community. And they will be applying some strategies and tactics for engaging their networks by amplifying project messaging. They'll be doing virtual listening sessions, hopefully in the summer, keeping our fingers crossed. We'll be able to do COVID safe in-person community events, talking about focus groups, one-on-ones with key stakeholders, creative engagement through the art, through arts, and also in-person surveys, recognizing not everybody feels comfortable going online and filling out a survey. So that's pretty much the work that we're doing. They're already beginning to schedule quite a few activities coming up. So, and that's it for me.
Joan, I have a question.
Sure.
So I see a lot of cultures represented on these teams. Are there any, or what's the plan to try to encompass people with disabilities across all of the areas? But I don't see specifically disabilities. So
Right.
what's the plan?
And that's a really good point, Ken. And I think I remember you bringing that up before. I think I could talk it over with Sophia. I'd be perfectly willing to have you come and talk to the group. I'm sure that within the geographic serving neighborhoods and even within those different cultural communities, there's people who are connected to people living with disabilities. But I think it's important to be intentional about the approach. And so, if possible, I'd like to tap your expertise on how to ensure that we have some intention around reaching out to the disability community.
And
And
maybe to add on to that too, kind of in kind of this phase that we're in too, we really want to identify the kind of targets and gaps that we have. Because we kind of have the group that ended up applying to be part of the cohort, and Joan took some efforts even to reach out further and try to fill in a little bit, and it was kind of how things ended up being contracted. But that doesn't mean that we aren't also focused on reaching that demographics of people. And some of those groups, work with elders that might have mobility challenges, but that doesn't necessarily capture the array of folks. So to that point, we as staff can work on connecting with different communities in that, and really want to focus on, and that is a demographic that we want to make sure also gets specific engagement. And like Joan says, tapping your expertise is obviously hugely valuable.
Right, and if I'm not mistaken, when we talked about the Blue Line extension way back when, there was a station being planned kind of near the Courage Center.
Yep.
That might be a good place to kind of focus on.
Yes, we've really appreciated the Courage County Center as a partner. And, in kind of one of our next topics too, it's kind of some of these project benefits that now are different, right? Because we had a station that was very, very close to them, and now that's not necessarily the case. And so Metro Transit still has the obligation to follow through and think about the transit access to that location. And so that's another example of a piece that even with the pivot, we don't want to lose. But Ken, I think the biggest message is we are committed to that work and making sure that we are inclusive.
Right. So it's important to note that with the community engagement cohort, we also have our own staff that are going to be doing additional community engagement. Those aren't the folks that are only going to be doing the community engagement.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm also kind of curious, Joan, just from a geographical outlook, or the areas that they're focused on, the 3, 2, and 1. It looks like it's very concentrated in 3, and I'm wondering if it's similar in the fact that that's where those groups are located, but that their attention can go beyond that. It just doesn't look like there's very much for area 1 and 2 as far as community outreach, and if that's
right. Sophia, can you go back to that previous slide for a minute? Partly that was intentional, Jason, knowing that area 1 is where there's likely not going to be any change in the planned route. And the most important part up in area 1 is make sure that people are informed and updated on the current status of the project. Area 2 is,
Medium.
yeah, has some change, most of the change being focused in Robbinsdale. And then Area 3 is really the area of the most change. So will require the most community engagement and more intensive community engagement. So um, that's how we intentionally set up this community engagement cohort.
And I can definitely appreciate that. I mean, it is like a large change. There's more options in Area 3, but I would say as far as the way that it's impacting the community and where it's being placed in the community, Area 2, even though it's only moving a little bit like distance wise, it's a pretty significant change as far as like how it impacts our community. So I guess just obviously we're here to help get the word out and get feedback and have those conversations, but I think it is worth noting that even though it looks relatively similar and there are sections in Crystal and Robbinsdale where it's relatively close to the original alignment, when it comes out of the rail corridor, it makes a major difference in the community. So just want to point that out.
Absolutely. And I acknowledge that. And I think I'll refer back to Sophia about how the project is really focusing on making sure those cities and those communities are fully engaged in the new direction that the Blue Line LRT is taking.
Yeah, Joan, I think that last part of that sentence is basically the crux of it. You know, got a lot of folks on board to help us extend our work, but everybody has their kind of niches and things. We still have dedicated project staff that are committed to working, with the Robbinsdale business community, with or in other places. So the projects team is still here. This I think we have a really, really awesome group of folks. Metro Transit usually doesn't have the flexible dollars to do something like this. So working so closely with Hennepin County to even take this step is something that I find super awesome. This isn't the end all be all. And so just need to still have, I think I'm starting to ramble a little bit, but the crux of it is that we are committed to engagement throughout the project area. And this group will do awesome work, and the project team will fill in and work with our trusted contacts to make sure that we're reaching everybody that we need to reach. I don't know, Jason, if that answered your question.
Yeah, no, that helps. And maybe, I mean, I'm looking at like West Broadway, which obviously comes into Robbinsdale. Like the Cleveland neighborhood is directly across the parkway from Robbinsdale. And so maybe it's, these areas are where they're geographically located, but their focus can come over into some of these other areas, in addition to maybe having some other groups that are focused in Robbinsdale and Crystal.
And not all of these contracts are equal dollar value. So the ones on the bottom just have kind of smaller communication grants. So they're just kind of amplifying project messaging kind of thing. So we have kind of the resources of folks to varying levels as well.
And if I could maybe, Chairs and Sophia, this is Sam O'Connell, just also offer up, and I think, Joan, maybe you want to share a little bit about this too, is that there's also the hope that they're working with each other and learning from each other. So it's the reason why they are called a cohort. So some of these groups will be teaming up and doubling, if you will, their efforts. So that's also pretty exciting. So I don't know, Joan, if you wanted to share a little bit more behind that thinking.
Sure. Definitely, we're encouraging collaborations because the contracts that we have with these guys aren't a heck of a lot of money, but they are nonprofits that are mission driven, and they're very dedicated to ensuring that communities are involved in this major project. I think if you look under the areas column, you'll see that Asian Media Access is working in Area 2 with the focus on the Asian community. Liberian Business Association is connected in Area 2 with immigrant businesses and actually all small businesses. They provide technical resource for. Northside Economic Opportunity Network is in area too, and they've done some work directly with Robbinsdale Chamber of Commerce. But I think it's also really good to note that Sam and Sophia are interested to hear from folks in Robbinsdale and Crystal if there are any community groups that we should be reaching out to, churches that we should be reaching out to for presentations and information sharing. I also know that I've done work, I did work with the Botno Community Works project, and I know that Marcia is an awesome person to talk to about reaching out to her community and making sure that people are informed. So we're completely committed to ensuring that Robbinsdale, Crystal, and 63rd and Brooklyn Park are well served with our community engagement.
Thank
It's
you.
also why this committee is set up the way it is, right? It has everybody, because we will have very area specific conversations, but we also need to have this project holistic conversation. And as we see by themes, things that come up in one area also get translated into other spaces as well. So Jason, we have a lot more work to do.
No, I appreciate the feedback. That's helpful.
Okay. So we kind of already talked about this slide, but a little bit of in the month of April, what we're really aiming to do is to host and participate in targeted events at either specific groups or areas of the corridor. And that is, you know, kind of every, to Jason's point, every area. The cohort helps with this. Some of you are helping with this, and so those that have reached out to me for events, like we really appreciate it. Just want to put that out there, and we're gonna fill in those gaps. That is what we got to do right now. So, unless there are other questions, we can move on to the next section, and I'll kind of turn it to Dan and Sam to give us some initial thoughts and grounding on this, and we'll just yeah, it'll.
Okay.
I lost my train of thought. There you go.
All right, Sophia, I'll jump in. You can take a break. You've been doing a lot of talking and facilitating some very good conversation today, and thank you. And as Sophia said, just to that last slide, we'll be able to come back in and next month and share with you where those gaps are, where we're backfilling in kind of the more of a plan of what we're doing. So we want to do this right. And we absolutely know we need to be connecting. So part of it is just getting that engine to run a little bit and make sure we're making those connections. So we want to spend some time with you all tonight to talk a little bit about kind of some of the issues that we've been hearing. And it's just not the issues in the last couple of weeks with the release of the potential routes that we're looking for feedback on. It's actually kind of going back to some of the concerns that communities have raised since we decided to transition the project since August of 2020. So we just want to touch on a couple things. So as we are working through this, our mind kind of sees these things. These are connected things. These are not discrete things, but just to kind of help us organize a little bit about what we are engaging on and what we're accomplishing through this project is we spent our last meeting and kind of these last few weeks in that conceptual engineering and design box, right? So that's where you got to hear from Dan and Nick and the team and talking a little bit about what are some of these lines, what could they look like, and kind of why were they identified as hosting light rail service through communities, and kind of understanding a little bit of what that means. So we spent some time in there. We will revisit that. We will definitely come back to that. You heard from Sophia and Joan as we also want to talk with community members about the project goals and the objectives and the criteria. We know this is very important, and our communities, our advisory committees, our corridor management committee in particular, has really helped us frame some of that, and we want to come back, right? We're hearing what's important. Sophia talked a little bit about, green infrastructure, and we want to maximize the opportunities a project like this can bring and absolutely minimize the negative impacts and begin to really get in front of that early on. So we'll continue to engage on that. So what we want to share with you and begin to roll out and just begin to explore the space. Can't say we have all the answers, can't say we even are speaking the common language right now, but we want to just kind of begin to work on the community benefits and the previous project commitment. So we can just go to that next slide that talks about that. So what do we say about community benefits and kind of previous commitments? So I'll stay on that left side of the slide in terms of community benefits. And it really is what we've been hearing since August when we've transitioned, when the project is sort of moving into this new area, is for some of our community members, it's really hard to be thinking about the benefits of this project until we can really begin to understand anti-displacement and equitable development, and how could a project like this begin to build community wealth through, through multiple generations. So we're going to spend some time with that tonight in that area. And we also kind of see that the commitments and some of the comments that we heard today, it's like, well, what happens to the former project? Sophia, I think, referred to it as kind of like, Blue Line 1.0 that we were working on for so long, really engaged with community members. They brought their best selves and really shared with us their desires to make their communities safer by using light rail, by bringing additional investments, by using light rail to connect, portions of the community. Well, with the alignment moving somewhere else, what happens to that and where do we go with that? So that's also a little bit of talking about our kind of next focus. I'm going to hold there and see if Dan wants to add anything to what we're sharing with you tonight.
Well, I just want to add that, what you will realize, most of you that will spend some time with us on this LRT project over the next few years, is that the topics and the pieces that we work on just bounce around a lot, and there are so many things. So we will spend many days, as you will see in the future, talking about, should the station go here? Should a station go there? What are the benefits of designing around various areas? How should we treat pedestrian crossings? How should we treat business impacts? All of those direct, where the tracks go and how the train operates kind of things. And then it's also important for us that we spend time and focus on other less direct and maybe more indirect areas, like we're going to talk about tonight, and what effects there can be to community and to businesses and housing and just livability and those kind of things around the communities where light rail gets built. And so we're going to spend a little time there today talking about some of our ideas and some of how we want the CAC, as well as our other committees, to help guide us on this. Sam also brought up the fact, and this came up from Ken earlier, about Courage Kenny, and you're right. I'm glad that Golden Valley is still with us on this committee. Some of the work we worked a lot on other areas when we move this forward, and so we have to be sure we can't forget about the fact that just because there may not be a station within a very close vicinity to Courage Kenny, it's still very close to the alignment. So how do we still connect with them? How do we still address the improvements that were going to be part of the previous alignment that may be different now? And then, as Jason said earlier, how do we deal with the fact that, we were going to be on the railroad and now we're going to be maybe even close by, but with much different impacts? So how does that all roll up together? So all part of what we'll do. We'll look forward to engaging a little bit tonight, and then working on the development of this kind of anti-displacement work will be probably pieces of our agendas, wouldn't you think, Sam, going forward? We're not going to answer all the questions tonight. This is not meant to be here's what we're going to do. This is meant to be the introduction of the concept and some discussion, and then this will be pieces of our agenda going forward so we can continue to work on it.
Thanks,
kind of
Dan. And I would just, sorry, Sophia, if I could just add to that, you know, so this is where we heard you, where you said, boy, it's really hard for us to react to something. And what we want to do is roll this out, like Dan was saying, kind of roll this out, see if we're hitting it on kind of targeting in and kind of zoning in and into kind of what the issues are, potentially a pathway to help us really get around that as well. So again, we don't expect you all to have the answers either tonight, but if you do have a gut reaction, if you do have something you're like, this is exactly what I was thinking about, or I was kind of thinking about this, but I also see it from this angle, let's have that. Let's, you know, we have time for that discussion. So Sophia's going to kick us off, and then Dan and I are going to kind of jump in a little bit as we walk through this. So if it's okay, we'll bring this back to Sophia.
So it's a little co-presenting here tonight, and I'll also add, you know, as we've been rolling this out, and I've had conversations through the day, and I just want to offer kind of two other pieces of framing. In that the last few meetings that we've had, we've been doing a lot of very foundational work, right? The information is new. We need to build upon it as we go. So we're just still in that phase, right? It's kind of getting the base of our work rolling and established and whatnot. Also just, and I'll just kind of get this into the next slide because it's related about what we've heard. Kind of getting to the root of the issue and why we're bringing the anti-displacement topic to the forefront, and really want to just kind of get in the committee's thinking that, you know, for some folks, and the issue of addressing displacement during this project is issue number one. And so that might not be the case for everybody on this call today, but it is something that the project team has been hearing a lot of and wants to take very proactive measures on. Kind of to this first bullet is displacement and gentrification it has been expressed to us as a major concern for the community. You know, to that extent of, you know, folks don't want to design their own displacement, right? Like, and we're not just talking about, you know, direct impacts by the project, like, oh, we have to take this one building because, you know, the tracks, you know, do something. We're talking about kind of even the forces of the investment, right? Like fully figuring out how you maximize the investment that's coming to do good versus just create displacement. Knowing that development and redevelopment are really emanating from the community and responding to the community vision. We talked a lot already tonight about how the previous alignment brought investments, and those needs remain. They don't go away because we pivot. And you know, today I've been in a couple conversations, both in a big group and then a phone call from folks that were kind of distraught, you know, about us pivoting the project and losing those benefits. I talked to a homeowner that you know, was expecting LRT, right? So we don't want to lose that, and we want community at the table, just like you all are with us tonight, and extending more. And community wants community at the table, right? Like, and part of that is as project sponsors. So as we bring this light rail, we have an obligation to address these issues and develop strategies and policies in conjunction with the project that speak to these issues, right? Sometimes it's kind of like dealt with over there, right? And we're not in that world anymore, right? It has to be fundamental to what we're doing. We heard also kind of that beginning of, so what, you know, what if, right? And really recognizing and celebrating that we have very dynamic and vibrant community assets, both in terms of businesses and cultural spaces on our alignment that we want to celebrate and amplify and strengthen and not lose. There's with a major investment, just the expansion of community wealth that lasts, and the people that are living in communities now get to benefit and enjoy that. And we don't just want to admire the problem, right? With some of these kind of hard to put your finger on issues, you can kind of chunk out pieces, but you really need to get to a slate of policies and strategies that are supported by resources that you could implement. So no just admiring the problem, really actionable items throughout, and that could be something that is we need right now in terms of baselining data so that we can measure and track, or kind of to very specific places in the project. We as a project team, and this is both what we've heard and what we reflect upon, is that we know we need to pull in more people than just kind of focus on the blue line right now. And some of that is the folks on this call today, right? Is that the public and private entities, philanthropic institutions that do this work and further these efforts. So I'm going to turn it over to Sam a little bit to talk about our kind of reflection process to get to this topic.
Thanks, Sophia. And we will have some, we do have some spaces in here where we've intended for us to have discussion. So just bear with us for a couple more slides and we'll get through that. So when we're sharing here about project partner reflection, this comes from not only the Met Council, but this is also Hennepin County. And we had to get real with ourselves and just sort of take this all in and say, boy, you know, 2 weeks ago, we just dropped potential route options that were active. So let's start working into the space really fast. And we all of a sudden we started hearing ourselves and we said, that sounds a little crazy right now. So let's see what we bring to the table. What is it that we bring some positive and some negative energy, and let's kind of figure that out. So it's our opportunity, and we don't do this very often in government, in the agencies we work in, to just take a pause and take a breath. So I just want to share with you that we recognize that we need to address the community concerns at all levels and across all sectors. And I think that provides us some incredible opportunities. It's also the challenge of this as well. It's bringing everybody to the table. It's beginning to really see this and from such different angles, and it's not easy. We recognize that, but that is something that we recognize we need to be doing. We also recognize our mere presence can raise concerns over trust, the sustainability of the effort, and really raises past trauma. I think Sophia and Joan and anybody who's been working in this project, you know, no matter if it's just been a couple weeks or if it's been many years, like some of us, a lot of times we do hear it's like, we don't want this project to be something that happened like I-94 through Rondo. I mean, there are folks that have made parallels. We've heard that here as part of our discussions at Community Advisory Committee. We hear that and we bring that, right? We own that baggage and we just need to recognize that. So we need to take a pause, and just us being in the room can cause trauma, can be traumatic. And then also just raises some trust issues. So we recognize that. The other piece about this is we recognize that the tools that we have today that maybe we're really, really proud of and we're really happy on some of the great work that they've done might just not work for tomorrow, or might not just work for what the community is going to need when we really kind of get a little bit deeper into the blue line and really begin to understand how the project is going to serve the community. So just want to share with you that we've done that as a team, and kind of we're learning. We're going to continue to learn, but just wanted to share that, you know, here's some things that we recognize within ourselves. We'll also want to share, maybe if we could go to the next slide, our opportunity to express some commitment here. We don't want to be just the folks that kind of parachute in, do this project, and then kind of go away, and then everybody's like, what happened? And, you know, we want to see some commitment. We understand folks want to have that commitment. So we recognize the answers just don't lie within the two agencies that are here today in terms of the Met Council or Hennepin County, that everybody has a role, and the work is going to address those short-term goals and short-term needs, as well as the long-term goals and the long-term needs. So we're here, we want to commit to the sustainability of this effort. We also want to identify the resources to address these issues. We get it, we understand, and that goes back to that sustainability piece, that we need to bring resources to the table. And in the past, we haven't done that, and we've barely even touched these topics. So we get that, and that is something that we can commit to. And we will commit with you that the actions we take are tangible and measurable. So it's, as Sophia said, not admiring the problem anymore, that we actually can see some benefits that folks can touch, feel, and know that they have their fingerprints on that as well, and then also be measured. So thank you for that indulgence. We just wanted to share those couple of points with you all, and we kind of understand where our starting point is with the community. So with that, I think I'll throw that back to Sophia.
Thanks, Sam. So we're building the table, right? We want to build an anti-displacement work group that can create these implementable recommendations. And so this slide kind of gets to our commitment of, as we build this, what are we getting to, and then the rest of it will be kind of feedback that we want from the group. So kind of to the main point of, we want folks at the table that have expertise. We want to make sure that there's resources, so it's not just talk, that it comes to delivering measurable outcomes. One of the key components of this is convening, to have a convened and managed by a third-party facilitator. So somebody with the capacity to really dive into it, that is a trusted resource in the community. And that'll be a question that we have for this group in a second. Because, you know, if Sophia's presenting or Dan's presenting, that we're putting the head of our organization at the table, right? And we really want this to be a collaborative outcome, because while it is fundamental to the project, it also goes beyond the project. So with that, we do want to meet on a regular basis through the duration of the project. There might, and when we think about potential next steps and things, there might be things that we do right away, right? But there's also pieces that might be addressed at different phases, or even after the project is implemented.
Yeah, Sophia, I mean, that's a good point. I just want to add, this is not short-term work. This is not, you know, let's put an anti-displacement team together to help us pick the best route option for this. This work will transcend any of the routes. This work will transcend the design, the implementation, the construction of, and the you know, eventual layout of the project. So, and then also it'll kind of go into, okay, what happens now? LRT's been built. Has the community turned into and evolved or stayed any of those pieces as we've wanted it to, and as the community has wanted to evolve with it?
So kind of also to our commitments, and thank you for that, Dan. Having it tied and brought, as Sam kind of said, having these conversations brought to the advisory committees. Sorry, almost need to sneeze. Okay, don't need to sneeze. In working on to develop that work plan, so that this is, you know, a very transparent group that has goals that we're wrapped into and furthering throughout all the steps. So with that, time for some discussion, and kind of like I said before, you know, you might need to think about some of this, and you know, we might need to have more things to react to, but we really are hoping to begin the conversation and begin those getting those brain wheels, cogs going. So part of this work is really coming to a shared understanding. When we think about addressing really complex problems that are multifaceted, having a baseline understanding. So when I say anti-displacement or displacement or gentrification, I mean the same thing that you do, right? Because they can be big, complicated definitions with many facets, right? So coming to a definition, kind of it's how would you define for your communities displacement, gentrification, other needed community benefits, or if you have any ideas on other fundamental pieces of this work that we should be defining.
If you don't mind. Yeah. This Brett Buckner, North Side resident, and coming from Met Council. First of all, thank you for actually taking this route for this work. It's a step in the courageous lane. So we talk about things such as Rondo. We have to think about things such as Olson. Olson was just as impactful to our community as much as Rondo was. So we've experienced these traumas in the past in the name of progress. So thanks again from that standpoint. I would love to be able to add the conversation around equity, really deepen our collective understanding of that. Some people would have one definition in doing the work. Some people will have another definition. So we need to really establish that if that's going to be our lead piece from there. Coming from North Minneapolis, I'm going to echo a lot of what Kenya said a couple weeks ago. This is an opportunity because remember, the former route 1.0 went around North Minneapolis, as opposed to actually coming and connecting the community. We affectionately sometimes call North Minneapolis the donut hole because everything happens around it. The opportunity that we do have, and this is again where I want to really amplify what Kenya said, because a lot of us in the community will say this as well. This is an opportunity to really create some brand opportunities for everybody. And we shouldn't be afraid of new things. We can't be afraid of the opportunity to raise the standards for everybody. Yes, there's going to be some furniture that's going to be moved, buildings that will be adjusted. But I think the biggest thing with trust through this whole process and starting to talk about how these words really are going to affect people, the piece about the trust is going to be the consistency and the clarity and understanding that everybody, everybody's not going to be at the table and somebody's still going to have something to say about this whole process. But if we're consistent and clear on with our messaging, I think we're going to be in great shape. But what I am excited about this one piece is we are going to we have to show the community that we are going to be a better community at the end of this process, and that they have the ability to be a part of that development as well. And I think if we are very strong and clear and deliberate about the idea of here's the opportunity, y'all. What do you want to lean in? That's when people are going to step up and say, well, I can do this, I can do that, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, I'll have, I'm looking forward to the conversation more than anything else, but I wanted to make sure that, one, we definitely amplify equity into that conversation, that's a clear definition amongst us and the overall piece. But two, let's not be afraid of the moment and the opportunity at this point.
Awesome comments. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Brett. Thank you.
Yeah. I believe Adam has his hand up.
Thanks, Sophia. And Brett, spot on, sir. I'm also a Northside resident, so spot on with you. I come from the construction side of things, so when I think gentrification and when I think creating actual equity for people in the community, the first thing that comes to my mind is a decent job, and is there any commitment? I know this is a little early in the project planning. How much commitment is there on this project to making sure that not only the beginning, the construction jobs and the well-paying union construction jobs most likely are people from the neighborhoods directly affected by this, and then the later jobs, the people actually manning the trains, doing the maintenance, doing all that kind of stuff, service, are also people from the community that we're directly trying to serve. Because that number one thing was jobs of what people wanted to see. This is going to create jobs in the neighborhood by infrastructure increases and all the businesses coming in. But are we going to make sure that the people who live in the neighborhood are building their own community while we're doing it? Because I think that's pivotal in making sure that, yeah, they would only work on the LRT for, say, a 2-year project span, but that's a career change. And when you want to talk multi-generational impacts, your parents or your siblings or your community makes a good impact and a good community job. That just leads to another generation. And the more the trades, especially, the more you have a person connected to a trade, the faster and easier it is for you coming up to get into that trade or even have it as a viable option. So I know that's early in the ideas, but that's a very big avenue I think that needs to be completely flushed out, in my opinion.
Adam, that was a question that I got asked basically earlier today, and I know Dan wants to respond, but also I'll kick us off a little bit. Yes, to start out with, and the Met Council has programs that focus on getting people in the construction trades as we think of launching these major light rail projects. And to your point, right? This project will be under construction for like three years or something, number 2 or 3 something somewhere number of years, and that is a great job opportunity, but it also isn't a forever. It's not forever, right? So we need to expose people to the various trades that come with these major construction projects, and then get them tied to big companies that do this work so that they can apprentice in, they can maybe work on these projects, and then they can develop their career post them happening. We Metro Transit has D-Line that's starting construction. That was a kind of question about how we're starting in the sandbox, right? And then this will come on later after their construction is way done. But it kind of all ties together, right? As we have this kind of like system of projects, really kind of focusing in on that. And then and I think we can do better even with this project, and I'm sure Dan will add to that. But in terms of our drivers and our LRT operators and our mechanics and all of those other kind of pieces that make Metro Transit run, Metro Transit is undergoing basically a pretty it's an effort that can improve, but they're being really intentional about making our systems more targeting communities to get them into our system, and then reducing barriers to entry, like having a CDL, how that works, how some of our testing works to be drivers. All of that is something that as an agency we need to improve upon and keep chipping away at, because they are good jobs, right? They're good. So yes, I think some of those thoughts and ideas are started, and we really need to focus on that and amplify that as we get further into the work. Sorry, Dan.
Well, no, those are all echoing comments I would make, as well as just that we also started a discussion with a former on the line project partner when we were down Highway 55, but still very close, and that's Summit OIC, and how Summit OIC can help become a partner in building up the opportunity maybe for some apprenticeships. And then just how we can get, I mean, you can't do enough right now to try to get folks into the trades. And so to the extent that we can help build some of that up and actually get people from the community working in the community on improvements that are part of the community, that's just great. And so we don't know all the answers, but we do know people to talk to and partner with to help us move that issue along.
And if I could just add to what Sophia and Dan shared today, there's already folks that are asking those questions to Sophia and Dan, saying that are working on Southwest, right? Like how quickly can we get this project going so that there isn't that gap, right?
Yeah.
That capacity that's been created on Southwest can move quickly over there. I would also say that Dan and I and a couple other staff this morning, we're talking about that, and we're not waiting for construction. We're beginning to ask those questions now. What can we do during procurement for some additional services and really begin to expand that, right? Because that creation of wealth starts today, and we shouldn't anticipate it happening in the future. So if we're not intentional today, it makes tomorrow less likely. So I appreciate that comment, Adam. Thank you for that.
I'd like to respond to Brett, if I could. I'm Pion Blackfoot Indian, and a lot of people don't know this, but in New York, there was a tribe of New York that became steel workers because no one else wanted to do the work, and they built wealth by the trades. And I would love to see North Minneapolis build wealth through the trades and vitalize the community.
Agreed, Jan. And yeah, I would say to that along with the trade, it is the investment opportunities as well. As we know what has happened on Green Line and many other places, the multiple real estate investments and those kind of opportunities that normally get passed by because ownership is in other people's hands as we're trying to develop these cultural corridors along West Broadway and other places as well.
Can I kind of echoing what Brett said earlier and what we're talking about in terms of the possibility of displacement, gentrification, and the risks behind that. Is there a way to discuss what happened on the Green Line on University, what the fears were, what was actually realized, and some of the lessons learned on that project? And with those lessons learned, just kind of reach out to the community and have the discussions centered around, here's what happened, here's what we thought would happen, here's how we're going to do better for this project moving forward. Because I think we have experience and we have a case study, and we have a case study that is not so old that the data is irrelevant, and the data is still coming in. So I'd like to just ask the people that are experienced with the previous projects if they can bring that to the table and be open and honest with what worked and what didn't, because that's going to go back to Brett's point about building trust in the community and making sure that people, we're talking about jobs that are going to come and go, but we also need to talk about the temporary displacement as well as the long-term displacement risks, as well as the opportunities after the construction project.
Just if I could, oh, sorry, Sophia, go ahead.
I was going to say yes, and also kind of pulling in national examples of people that are doing similar work and kind of updating that conversation as well. So, we've tracked a lot of business and business change during Central Corridor that I think we can really bring forth to this discussion. And then there's people that have also kind of pushed some of these discussions other places. So kind of building that knowledge up in our advisory committees and the conversations we have with communities is, I think, we've been hearing that as well. So when we think of next steps, something that we will need to do.
Yeah.
Sam.
Sorry. Yeah, thanks. No, you're fine. I was just going to add, Dan Solar is very close to that, right, given his experience, and so Dan can bring that in, and appreciate that, Giuseppe. That's exactly what we were thinking too. That was a model, that was a opportunity and experience, and there's kind of unique things that sort of factored into that. And how could we use that to really broaden and create some best practice experience and bring that to the Blue Line extension? I'll just also say that the council has benefited from that in the sense that has created opportunities and capacity. And we have a council member, Chris Ferguson, who was definitely impacted as a property business owner on Central Corridor, and would love to have him come because he sees so many sides of that. And I appreciate your comment, Giuseppe, of like, we should get real. The experience is what it was, and bring those voices and not be afraid to that, because what that is going to allow us to do is be better and not run from that.
And for sure, be humble and say, yeah, this was a mistake, but we recognize it and we're learning from it. That part is going to be really important in a community that is afraid to trust again.
Yeah, I mean, Giuseppe, we got that. Your comment was also, I think, Sam, almost identically came to us at the Business Advisory Committee as well. Hey, let's pull together some data, some facts, some numbers, some real world experiences about what works and what doesn't work. And I mean, we've got experience of what did it mean because of parking? What did it mean because of construction? Where have we seen? I mean, we can point to real examples of where we saw development succeed, and where we've seen development, maybe not take off where we thought maybe that it would. And so why is that, and what are the differences there? So that's all part of how we can bring that information to this. Yes.
Giuseppe, what I love about that question too is it also challenges us in the way of we can talk about development, but whose development and who benefited, and that's, I think, is the real piece of that question and bringing that forward.
Yeah.
Ken has been waiting for a little bit with his hand up, so want to give the floor to Ken.
Sure, and I absolutely appreciate the rich dialogue that's been happening. I want to add one more concept to this concept of real life experience, what we learned and the lessons we learned that were not good that we want to change. We have also an opportunity not just to collect organizations within the area that we need to focus on, but we have a wide reach of agencies to reach out to as resources. And I think we also need to be able in those conversations with citizens, whether they're about development, whether they're about housing, whatever it is, uh, increasing wealth, looking for jobs, I think we need to partner and bring in, or at least have resource specialists that can connect people with the resources that they may need that are out of our scope. But we are going to encounter them nonetheless, and we should be able to have at our easy disposal a way to connect them to the resources that they may need in order to move to the next step. I think, I think the conversations I've heard, DEED has a lot of outreach programs that they want to try to focus on apprenticeships and internships, and the Department of Transportation is always looking for CDLs. So I think there are lots of partners that we can bring in as exterior kind of partners with us to be able to hand off resources to people that may need it in order for them to move to the next phase.
Good point, Ken. And that'll actually lead into our next question of, I know Gene has his hand up, but since Ken teed us off, I'll just move to the next slide. Anyway, so that this can get added to the conversation, I'll turn it to Gene with his hand off. So when we think of setting this table of this group to talk about anti-displacement work, and kind of those the pieces that Ken was talking about, we have three kind of main questions, which is who in community would be a trusted facilitator to convene and manage. And as we've been framing this, it's both, and it could be an individual, could be an organization, or organization with an individual within an organization. So, right, like you could say, Kira, and then I have a very specific person at Kira, or I know this individual that's a consultant that has been doing this kind of work I've worked with on maybe a similar project that we would like you to consider. So that, and then kind of the in your communities, the philanthropic, nonprofit community organizations, others in the development community that you could, to kind of how Peggy Sue phrased it in the chat, that are ready and would really like to partner on pushing this forward. And to what Ken brought up, the other public agencies that can really add to this discussion and connect those pieces. So since we kind of teed that up, there's some thoughts to continue the discussion with, and we'll turn it to Gene to add his thoughts.
Well, actually, I'm trying to turn off my little hand icon, and I can't figure out how to do it.
If you hover by your name, it'll give like an X, and you just click it.
Thank you.
Yes, you can raise your
hand. So for folks, feel free to continue to use the chat, the raise hand function. If you hover by your name in the participant list, you can turn it on. It's also and now I can't see it because I'm in presenter mode, but there's a bar on the bottom. There's like a couple dots, and a raise hand is one of those functions. Does anybody have any thoughts on these questions?
Wow, that's a hefty question there, Sophia. But yes, so I'll start. Yeah, bottom up for sure. I'm looking at it from our standpoint in North Minneapolis. Definitely affected our public school system, of course. I'm not sure if you had a chance to. I mean, I'm pretty sure you had, but and for two reasons. One, of course, headquarters is right there, and would be an amazing partner. But two, because of the potential that we're going to have to really think about of district parking. And they have one of the largest parking lots in the area. To bring them into this conversation is, I know that it's been done, but I'd rather say it out loud as opposed to not saying it from there. I rely upon two facilitators. And again, this is a group, UROC, of course, with Makeda Zulu Gillespie and her team over there would be a great advocate, great team. And also Anika Robbins, who knows the area in our community as well. I would actually add in as, and again, we have some emerging groups. Philanthropic, we have the Phillips Foundation that's coming onto West Broadway now, which is a brand new development. Definitely Sanctuary Church is someone that you would want to connect with as well. And I'm missing one other. Of course, the park board has a seat at the table already, but because of projects that we're working on along West Broadway and adjacent to it, it's something to be held as well. So that's my initial list. I probably have a couple more later on.
Yes, and to that, if you think of others that you want us to include in the notes or amend to kind of the discussion and for us to keep track of, feel free to email me later. There, you kind of start to ruminate, and you're like when I even started to ask myself this question, I was like, oh, I have people start popping up, right? So just encourage the committee to do that as well. If you send me suggestions post this meeting, we'll attach them. Well, we're bringing it in anyways, but we'll attach it to the meeting minutes.
I mean, this team, guys, is something, a little bit different than we've done before. We want to try to bring together the kind of disciplines that can help advance this discussion, and we don't want it to be all public members. We need some help from the development community. We probably need some help maybe from financial organizations, like we said, nonprofits. And then we really want this team, this working group, to be able to develop recommendations that are implementable, that we can bring to the appropriate jurisdictions, which may be a city in some cases, maybe the county or Met Council in other cases, to help put in place policies, practices, procedures that can advance this agenda.
And that some of those groups actually might be the implementers, or
That's right.
or part or all of some of the recommendations. And also just want to say, even as we form this table, we would also consider a robust plan of broader community outreach, like step 1 and 2, trying to get it all together. Kind of let it ruminate for a second. Minnesotans don't like sitting in silence, but I'll let it for a second, and then we'll kind of get on to the next slide.
Well, I will say, Sophia, one of the things that I'm thinking about is just in Robbinsdale, I know we have a Human Rights Commission, and I would think that in other communities across the corridor and alignment, that that they would have human rights commissions as well that are just engaged in equity and justice, and talking about displacement and gentrification that might be able to help facilitate some of those ideas as well.
I know Golden Valley has one. I know the city of Minneapolis obviously pulls that in.
I mean, Hennepin County has a whole business line of disparity reduction that touches on numerous things, including transportation as well as housing and many things. So that's a good suggestion, Jason. Each of the, I mean, this is where we need to be in 2021 as we evaluate and move forward this piece.
Also add, the Met Council also has an equity advisory committee. Maybe they'll come to every meeting, but we're bringing some of this to them for their feedback as well as we're developing some of this. So it's layering all these pieces. seen some comments in chat from, just want to read it out loud for folks. Peggy Sue suggests that more grassroots orgs like neighborhoods or gave the example of our streets.
No, sorry, Sophia. Neighbors for More Neighbors is an organization.
Yes, I was stumbling over my words a little bit.
Yeah.
Good.
So
Those are ones I have not heard of before, so that's good to see.
Yeah, so Neighbors for More Neighbors, and we're starting to do this in Ward 4. I think I'm going to be the contact person where we're going to talk about housing in the ward and talking especially around like the council races, because Neighbors for More Neighbors, I think they're doing like a housing survey that all candidates kind of filled out to kind of get a sense of where they fall in lines in terms of housing. But they do a lot of kind of advocacy around kind of like there's a lot of anti-2040 rhetoric. So they're kind of the opposite of that, of really saying that Minneapolis needs to be a place that's building more housing and being really inclusive. So I have some contacts there if that's something that we would want to connect with. But then also, yeah, Our Streets is doing a lot of organizing along right now Lyndale and Lowry, Lyndale Avenue South and then Lowry Avenue Northeast. But I think they're a great organization that's really focused on making streets better for those who bike and walk. And I think transit obviously fits into that. So I would say there's a lot of people, especially kind of that opposite rate of a lot of people who live in these neighborhoods who are really excited about this and advocates for it exist within those groups.
Thank you for those suggestions. I think that's what we're looking at, really looking for feedback on. Okay.
So if I can make a suggestion, Sophia, kind of like what we did with this one, I think maybe this is a good place to like go back and think, and in our next meeting come back with, I mean, obviously we can always communicate with one another and share the information if we have ideas, but to like come back and begin our next conversation with talking about what we uncovered and what ideas we came up with.
Thank you for teeing that up, Jason. I think that makes it, I have a few more questions, but maybe since you teed it up, I'm going to go to the last slide and then we'll go back, which is we want to bring this topic back in May for the committee and to kind of start forming up these ideas and talking more about how we get to this implementation. And so kind of that next up reaction, so building upon what we're talking tonight. And then also kind of add to it by starting to develop our approach to form and support this working group and some of the initial framework for the group. There's some very fundamental questions that we get pushed on as we start to think about these things, and so kind of pushing that step forward and putting some ideas to paper a little bit, but then still having a lot of room to adjust and form and react and add and shape it so that it's right. So with that, just also want to start everybody's brain cogs going on these questions. So major, or not necessarily major, but just important initial actions for this group to take and consider. And then thinking about how we define success. So, to the kind of the comment about courageous conversations, if we when we look back, have we been successful? What does that look like? How could we just start to define that? Other fundamental questions that we want to start framing as we think of bringing this group together. And I think these in particular, once the group is formed, there'll be something that they'll need to talk about a lot. But there's pieces of this that we want to kind of pull into the framework and the fabric as we starting to get this started, because it'll help us set that table. So last big lofty question for thoughts.
So I'll start this one out, or just to kind of refer back to if anybody missed it in the chat, but Scott had made the suggestion of like, can we get a summary of available data and studies that I think like set the groundwork and kind of level set what we know now. And I think that will help us determine what is successful, because again, kind of looking back at those previous experiences, what did we think was going to happen, what actually happened, which pieces of those were benefits and which ones were, you know, were negative. So I think just the more information we can have, that's like the data to say, here's where we level set, this is like the grounding of where we start, I think that's a good point, and just it didn't come up before, so maybe start there.
I think that is a piece, and then we've heard it I think multiple times now, is you know, as we think of diving into this conversation, you know, some of this will be brand new, right? We actually want to chart new uncharted areas potentially, and develop things that you know, that we want, that are tries, right? But we can learn from what's been done both locally and nationally, and getting our team to put some effort into pulling that together and showcasing that to get into that conversation more deeply. Dan, I think, wanted to respond to that. And then I see Brett and then Jean wanting to add.
Well, let me just add before we hear from those guys, Sophia, that this what does success look like becomes a very, very subjective piece depending on what people may say. In other words, some folks may say success to the community after building LRT is that property values increased by 25% on all properties within a half a mile. And some people's success may be that property values do not significantly change close to the LRT line in order to keep the area affordable. Two very different views that are there. Some may say we want, part of building LRT is that we get more housing, but what kind of housing, right? We get more housing, but we get more housing that is unaffordable by people that already live in the neighborhood. Is that success? Not necessarily, right? So more housing might be a success, but what about the right kind or wrong kind of housing? What about the kind of businesses that people want to see? So all of that is different, and we saw some of that play out along University Avenue when we built LRT there. So this is not a there's a right answer thing. It's going to be different for different folks, and what we want to make sure of is that, you know, that we are understanding just where this leads us. I think some people had some questions, Sophia.
I think Brett was up next.
Yeah, Dan, I mean, well said on that. Again, it's all based on perspective and even the timing of that perspective. So it's going to be fluid as much as possible. What you know, again, I want to take a step back, and I want to be able to take a look at those initial surveys, you know, for this group as well. Because the story is being told right now by the people who are doing those surveys. They're telling us exactly what success looks like, or what they would like to look at, or the concerns. So definitely, if we can really synthesize that, I think that would be a great starting point for all of us, and continue to build, you know, just as we're trying to triple those numbers. I think that's going to really set the tone for this narrative and the story itself.
That I love that framing, because, you know, as we look at past examples and even things that are currently happening around the country, like, so you could take the Central Corridor, for example, and say, we did really awesome with this, right? It was an awesome program, and that doesn't really. Why are we saying that? What would be behind that, right? Like, what was the impact of tangibly, and how does that apply to what we're trying to put forth, right? Because that's the so no, right. It's how we're looking at that data and bringing that into the conversation of what do we want success to be? Did it do what we think success is now? Agreed. Jean.
Well, I think Dan and Brett are like spot on. I'm a little more simplistic about this. What I'd like to see this happen in 10 years is that it's being usage, okay? In order to be used, I believe we need community wealth, and Dan is spot on, because every community has a different interpretation or definition of what quote unquote community wealth is, whether it's this, that, or the other really doesn't matter to me, as long as through this whole process and all these communities, each community can experience their version of community wealth. But I believe in 10 years, the bottom line is usage. Otherwise, we're wasting our time. If people aren't going to use this, you know, it's meaningless. And the only way they're going to use this, I believe, is with community development, community wealth, however each community chooses to define that. So my word would be usage.
Well, and I would want people to be able to say, instead of people saying, why would I consider building a business in North Minneapolis? Are you crazy? That's a crime-ridden nightmare up there. And instead of saying that, people would say, hey, guess what? I'm thinking about opening a business in North Minneapolis because we have LRT service close by. There's some exciting things going on up there. There's a connection to Robbinsdale. There's some exciting things going on in Robbinsdale. I have the ability to I can get on LRT from my North Minneapolis neighborhood to go to North Hennepin Community College to the north, to the airport or the Mall of America to the south, and I'm connected to the Twin Cities. And so I want to be here because it puts me connected. I had some people say that where we were talking about building north, they said, technically with an LRT station here, I can walk out of my door and have access to anywhere on this planet because all I have to do is ride the LRT to the airport, get on an airplane, and then I'm moving all over. And so why can't the communities along this alignment realize the benefits that come with potentially having that very close by? That's part of what success can mean. So I think Gina, I think you're saying that right.
Also, just want to kind of say that when we think of our communities, even without the benefit of LRT, there is vibrancy and goals and people living in them doing really great work. And so don't want to lose that as well.
Sophia, I was just going to say, it looks like Scott has his hand up.
Oh, Sophia, I just wanted to add on to Brett's comments. And Jason, thanks for talking about the data. I think the question that I had last time we got together around kind of the use of this data, I very much see it as a package. And the question that I have for this committee, because I think it is a little bit of a Pandora's box once we start to open that up, what are we willing to do around that? And are we willing to engage with it? And I think Brett brought up some great points around when you start to bring up surveys that were done and lived experience and all those type of things, all that is seen through the filters of the folks that did the surveys, their motivations, what the questions were, all those types of things. And so I think we would be remiss if we just kept all that closed and had great community engagement, tens of thousands of inputs, but we never opened up the box. And so I'm suggesting that we open up the box. We talk about the filters, we talk about the motivations, we talk about the survey quality, all those types of things during the course of this year that we have ahead of us. But I know that that's a big piece of work, and I know that it'll probably lead to passionate discussions and things like that. But I would love for that to be in our scope. And the question I raised last time we got together is, and maybe I wasn't very articulate on that, is that in our scope? And I would love it to be, and I would love other people on the committee to support that.
I think since you phrased that to the committee, I'll let folks react to that a little bit versus answering myself. But how we show data, how we think about data, how we keep the conversation broad to really get to those definitions are all things that we need to do. Lean into it. Philippe gave some comments in chat about usage and what people know how to do on transit. other comments or thoughts that people want to kind of get out? We have about 10 minutes left. We don't have any other content to cover in terms of the presentation. It's really that our next meeting is in May and the project website. So can leave this time for kind of anything that came up during the agenda, even if it was through this conversation also related to the first meeting, kind of leave this time to how the committee and the co-chairs would like to use the last 10 minutes.
Well, Sophia, I actually have a question. I have a question. I have a question for Scott because I want to make sure. I want to make sure I'm understanding a little bit more about what you're asking, so that I can understand, or so that I can, hopefully be able to deliver on that piece. So tell me. Just break that down a little bit more, and maybe other people understand it better, and I'm just missing this. But like, what pieces that you're thinking we need to get after or get available so that we can drill down on this further?
Yeah, Dan, it's more likely that I'm just not being very articulate late in the day today. So when I think about this, again, as we're asking for community input, we're having community meetings, we're having a working group that we're spinning up. The experiences that folks bring to the table, all those things are extremely important, extremely valid. But we have real world experience from many, many years of the Met Council around what worked, what didn't work. This particular line affected residents in this way based on our best available knowledge, but after X number of months, here was the potential upside. And oh, by the way, here's some comments from them after the fact. Okay. And so, we've thought it was a net plus. That's what I'm asking to bring into this process. And again, if I'm trying to force something that doesn't make sense for this committee, just shoot me down on that, and others can shoot me down as well. But I think that should be part of our scope, so that as we're talking about all the inputs and thousands of comments and everything else, we have a grounding in this. And the point I just tried to make a minute ago is I'm aware that is fraught with difficulty, because as soon as you open up the Pandora's box, everyone will have different impressions of, well, the survey was flawed, or look who asked this question, or all those type of things. But I would prefer that we do that. I think that's more kind of higher value stuff for this group as the months go on. Not that everything that we're already talking about isn't high value, but I would love for this group to engage on that.
So Sam, I think that we can take that and develop to the best of our abilities, whatever we can to get around that. I don't think we should necessarily try to shy away from anything that can provide input, good or bad, to help guide our decision making.
Yeah. Yep. No, I appreciate it. Thanks for providing some clarification on that, Scott. And there are definitely things we can bring forward. I would like to think that the Center for Transportation Studies is maybe sort of a neutral organization in our community. They have done some good research on the existing blue line and on the existing green line. We can bring that in, and and as the group feels comfortable calling that foundational documents to help us begin to frame some of these issues, we'd be happy to do that. But yeah, we can start thinking about how we share some of that information too.
Well, so has Humphrey too. I know Humphrey Institute has done some things around valuations, things like that. So there's stuff out there some of it we have to search for, but that's okay. We'll see what we can get our hands on to help inform and help move along the discussion.
So this is Ken. I've got a little bit different of a question, different kind of a question. So I know we're still at this really high level perspective that we are kind of beginning at. The other question I want to ask is, are there components of the Met Council that are already designing footprints for stations, depending on what the stations look like, the options of the stations? design of the cars. Are those things happening simultaneously? Do they happen later on? Is there a process for that?
Both. So some we will continue to advance our engineering as we're having some of these conversations. So kind of parallel tracks that we have to work on. If we we kind of think of the four boxes, right? That there's the evaluation, so kind of our kind of planning lens of the project. There's the advancement of our engineering. There's the and then there's this discussion, kind of the in our past project commitments. Some of the specific examples that you brought up, such as like procurement of LRT vehicles and what they would look like and look like inside, or anything beyond just like the basic station footprint. So like this is how much space we need for a station, is going to happen later in the process. So like what we'll talk about this year when we start to place stations is really some of the really basics. Like it takes about this wide, and this is maybe kind of how you connect to it. But that beefing up that station design will kind of be a process. When we think of actually like laying out the specifics of the platform, we kind of had some blue line station design that we can lean on, and bringing that forward and getting into it. We're going to end this year with very, very conceptual engineering, basically that baseline to answer some of the questions. So sum that up, both. Advancing it, but not necessarily to the level that we're
And
of the
Sophia,
examples.
on some parts of the corridor, we're very far along with the design. So this is kind of a funky one, Ken, in that it isn't an alignment that we're starting from scratch on. So up in Brooklyn Park, we've got a lot of the design work done, and then in the southern area, a lot of it's changing. And so there's a real hybrid of where we are in that.
Okay, so and maybe what I can do is you can connect me with whomever I might speak to, but I have some very specific safety issues related to the footprint that we have learned from Central Corridor that still haven't been corrected and still exist as safety issues in my mind that I want to make sure get on the design table early so people can start thinking about that.
Oh yeah,
Nick.
We'll find a way to make that happen, because I'm very interested in whatever you're going to say, Ken. I'm interested in. I know we've walked and looked at and touched and felt and and done all kinds of things out there. And so yeah, let's make sure I like to say we're going to build everything on this line just like Central Corridor, except we're going to get rid of the things that don't work.
Okay.
Everything else we're going to keep. So that's a little bit, that's a kind of a joke, but at the same time, you learn and you make adjustments and then you do better.
Absolutely.
So we'll do some of that.
Okay.
All right. And so Ken, let's touch base. I know Dan would be interested in the conversation. I know Sam would be, and Nick hasn't done much talking today, but he would be very much interested in the conversation.
Okay, terrific.
As always, Ken, we will include you. You've been helpful on our previous design, and we want to keep that collaboration.
All right, thank you.
Well, great meeting today, guys. Jason, Philippe, thank you.
We'll let the co-chairs have the last words here.
Hey, it's Felipe. I just want to say thanks for everyone for joining. There's really good discussions about it. So there's a lot of follow-up, but I think getting together and the starting place of seeing what they did with the green line, I think is a really good starting point to help us really figure out where to go from here. So.
Thank you. Jason, any
yeah,
comments
I
to
guess
close out the meeting tonight?
I'll just say, I appreciate everybody taking the time and the thoughtful input, and I think just taking some time to think about some of these topics and then revisit in our next meeting next month will, I think, really help to further these conversations. It's kind of hard to come up with all these ideas on the fly. Right. So we'll have a month to think about it, and hopefully we'll come back with some more amazing and thoughtful ideas.
Awesome. Well, have a good evening, everybody. To the extent that we want to continue conversations, you know where to find me, and look forward to getting deeper into these discussions with you all.